So that it doesn't,
Stands with this conviction.
it's strong.
I do too sometimes, but with coke,
Well, that's because all the nerve
Because
stuff
we can
goes
elevate to the.
to your
Yeah.
feet, when your legs are.
Hopefully you didn't read everything, but don't expect you to.
What I did.
This is a high overview.
Okay, good evening. I will call our meeting to order. Ramona, you have our roll call, I'm sure, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Mayor. Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we invite your Holy Spirit into this room. We ask you to fill this room and this building and all of our hearts. Thank you for who you are and what you are. Thank you that you have people directing your city that, or managing and trying to take care of your city that love this city. Pray that you be with us today. We know that the plans that man have cannot happen unless they're your will. So thank you that your will supersedes ours and that you are all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving. Thank you for the wonderful Father that you are. Be with us tonight. Help us to move quickly, thoroughly, and amicably. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, I'm going to turn our meeting over to our city manager, Mr. Womack. And as we go through each section, feel free to raise your hand and ask my questions. Okay. Hopefully you've all had a chance to browse a lot of it, and go through a lot of it. We are doing a recommendation, by the way, to the planning commission. Our final approval technically is within the budget, which comes that second meeting in May.
See, already stealing my thunder.
Oh, well, you can repeat it in better form than what I just did.
All right, so this is a special meeting, but there are no decisions I'm asking you to make tonight. This is really more into a workshop. As you guys have heard me say a couple of times now, we're just trying to do something a little bit different this year. Obviously, we've got 3 new members, so you're not as familiar with the capital improvement program that we have here in the city. So we are required, I believe by law, to have a 6-year plan for how we intend to expend our money into the future. So that's what this document is. Now, normally, I believe it's the Planning and Zoning Enabling Act requires that the Planning Commission shall approve the CIP. But obviously, you guys make the final decision on what the budget is going to include. So we thought it's a good time, not only for governmental transparency purposes, but also I don't want to propose something to you that we know that you're going to see. So that's really kind of the only goal I'm looking for here today is at some point, I want to hear, no, we are not interested in this. This is not going to happen, whatever. Which we would then take as a recommendation to the Planning Commission. And then they will approve of the CIP to send back to you as part of your budget. Okay. Now, I can't tell what the Planning Commission wants to do. Neither can you. Hopefully they get the hint, though, that if it's a recommendation, that's something we'd like to see changed. And so they can recommend anything they can give you a final approved CIP that they want. There's nothing you can do about that, but then you could then just refuse to enact it, right? So I don't want to spend too much time on this today. I'd be happy if we get out of here in 1 hour. So.
I have a question. Let's say they bring it back to us and as a city commissioners, we said, we don't really like some of it. Can it be sent back and then brought forward, or what do you do in that case?
So I don't know what's been traditionally done here. From what I understand, you could simply just approve the budget without sending it back. But I don't know the legal interplay between the capital improvement program being approved versus the budget being approved.
Mhm.
My assumption today is that you could just approve the budget the way you want to approve the budget. And then at some point over the next year, the planning commission will have to revamp the CIP.
Okay.
So.
I have one question. if we're working closely, or so this seems, with the planning commission, why wouldn't we have our first meeting together, listen to theirs? Because it feels like we could work things out instead of going back and forth.
Well, and so maybe in the future, that's a good recommendation. Maybe in the future, we'll treat this more like a joint meeting. Again, this was just an idea that we had. We're not required to have this meeting. We just thought it was a good idea. So maybe in the future, we'll do that. It would be nice, of course, to see what happens when we get to the planning commission and, if you have recommendations. This is all kind of just a new thing for us. So it's a good idea, maybe for the future.
I think in the past, it was like part of one of our commission meetings, just us to kind of review some of it. I think I like this way better, actually.
So Madam Clerk, do we have the camera looking over here?
I don't know.
You won't know until-
Yes, Ms. Hannah?
I would just like to add just further clarification. The mayor is correct. Normally during the budget workshop, the CIP program would be heavily discussed. So part of this is to give you plenty of time to get those questions, to get your feet wet with the document. Ultimately, the planning commission, they adopt the CIP. The city commission does not, but you adopt the budget. So if there was a project that you are not in favor of, and even a year down the road, let's just say a road project comes forward to you, you have the will, you have the ability to change the project as the projects move forward. Where the planning commission never gets involved at that level. The planning commission is truly looking at, this is the city's 6-year recommended plan for the next 6 year. And that's really the level that they're adopting this.
Another couple interesting things is, of course, it's just a plan, right? I can't guarantee what's going to happen 6 years from now any more than you guys can. And of course, stuff comes up all the time where we say, oh, we got to add that to the CIP. So beyond the first year, and that's what we're going to focus on mostly today, beyond the first year, it's all changeable. So, and again, let's say we have something in here that's $300,000. And then we actually go to bid it out and it comes in at $200,000. Well, great, savings for us, okay? So ultimately that's taken care of though within the budget. And you guys are gonna be the ones receiving the budget, the bids as part of your just tasks as city commission. So you could also, I'm sure she means well, but it's very distracting. So you could also get a project where we say it's gonna cost $300,000, the bid comes in at $400,000. At that point, as commission, you can just say, no, we're not doing this. It's too expensive, whatever, you didn't get enough bids, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a guidebook, it's a plan, but it's not going to drive everything we do.
Would it be fair to say that it's harder to add money for projects than,
It is, yes.
like, this is kind of the part where we can add money into things that we would want to accomplish, right?
Not really.
I don't mean that I want to add anything, but like, if we don't talk about it now, it's hard to put that project.
Funds in, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so, the CIP is really, it's staff time, it's staff work because, and forgive me for saying this, but you don't know what things cost, right? I don't know what things cost. We have an idea of a plan we want to do, and then we have to figure out how much it costs. And then we have to go, talk to the finance department and say, well, how are we going to pay for it? And that's all information you're going to see here.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into this, well, let's add all of these plans today. Really, we're just talking about a high level of here's kind of, get familiar with it.
Yeah.
And you're going to see the stuff that we're going to propose in this year's budget. And so that's really what I want to focus on is this year's budget. Here's what we're proposing. Hopefully, you guys are okay with that, right? But if not, we'd like to know now. Okay. So we'll start you out on page 3. I put together this, it's very short, but it gives you a very good kind of idea of what we're doing this year. So read it if you'd like. The more important part is page 4. Forgive me, we didn't make a PDF, PowerPoint here, it's just PDF. So page 4, this is
Wait,
the.
Mike, I just have a question about page 3. I don't know if this is correct, or it should say planning commission where it says in accordance with the priorities established by the city commission through the various goals and objectives, meetings, and strategic planning sessions. I'm like, is that the last commission? Because I don't think I've attended any goals and objectives, other than the retreat that we had, which we didn't talk about budget or anything. So I
Well-
wonder if that was supposed to say priorities of the planning commission.
So, again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but, ultimately, you guys drive the policy of the city. The planning commission helps staff with the timing of events and where's the funding coming from, and thinking of ideas and having that kind of well of knowledge about, because they've been doing year to year. So, that's how in fact, I think that came from Dave, how he wrote it.
Okay. I
And
didn't- I
Melissa,
just
are you
wondered-
referring to the goals and objectives, like the
Well, I
previous
wondered-
commission, but this also extends, before you
I'm
guys.
just, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And also the other one before
That's
that,
what I'm asking. If
A
this
lot
is
of it
referring
came
to that,
the
not
commission.
anything we've.
There is a goals and objectives
Before
that goes out to
the
26.
ones that you just replaced,
Okay.
which Commissioner Atwood and
So if
myself would
the
have been at.
if the question is, was this all done by the last board that just got replaced? No.
Okay.
This stuff it's a long-term project.
Yeah.
So this is definitely not, just the wish list of the last guys. And in the same way that you guys will then be able to affect change gradually, and that may outlast you as well. So,
When is our goals and objectives due again? Is that in the next year or two?
I think it's 26.
26? I'll have to look it up. Okay, it's, coming in the next couple of years, but Ramona can check on that for us.
okay, and of course, the strategic planning session we just got done doing, that helps guide the process. So if there was something that had come up at that meeting that was really important that we wanted to add to the CIP, then we would start the process of adding something to the CIP. But it's never just like one event. All right, so page 4, this is the, proposal for this year, major CIP projects. There's gonna be a lot of information that's presented in different ways. So it's not all new information that you're seeing, it's just the same information in different ways. So at the top, you'll see the different categories that we use for the CIP and the amount that's being proposed for this year and the percentage of that CIP budget. So you can kind of get a rough idea of how much we're spending on the various projects. I didn't present you with the numbers from previous year, but I believe in previous year, the Parks and Recreation budget was much higher than it was or it is this year. Because as I told you, I want to focus on the streets and the parking lots, because that's what people want to see done. At least that's my opinion, but what I think people want to see done, right? So you see that the major streets is going to be about 41% of the budget. The public safety is 20%. So those are the two big focus areas for CIP. But the individual projects start about halfway down the page. I did start at the biggest project and work my way down. These are just the major projects, $75,000 or greater, which I think accounts for about 89% of the total CIP. Yeah, 88. So let me go through these real quick. Feel free to give me comments if you want. We'll talk about them if you need to. But I think they're all pretty straightforward. Okay. So the Park Pine Street and Parking Lot number 9 project, these are all kind of located in the same area. We think we'll see 10 to 15% savings if we can do them all at the same time due to something called mobilization. So we're planning for it, but it is going to be a multi-year project. So you'll see that there are subparts A, B, and C there for the different projects and how we propose to spend the money. Now, it may just be a little backwards if you look at the 24-25 and the 25-26. Starting with Park Street, Calhoun to Saginaw, it's $2.8 million, which you'll see later on that we're probably going to have to bond for that. Now, that's this budget year, but it doesn't mean we have to do it like today. July 1. We're probably looking at June of 25. Okay. Now, because it's a bond, we don't have to do it any particular time. So we decided.
Could you explain the bond, refresh my memory also,
Okay.
on the bond process and what that really,
Okay, so I'm definitely not an expert. I like to think of it as kind of like mortgaging a house, right? You need to go to a bank. This is very simplistic terms. You need to go to a bank and ask for a certain amount of money, and then you're going to spend that money on a project, right? So you're going to pay an interest rate on the amount of money you take, and then you pay that money back over a term of years. Obviously, it's not a mortgage because there's not a house involved, but that's the basic process. And we just don't have enough money to do, I forget the total dollar amount on this project, but it's a huge project. And I think we have a number of bonds that are falling off in the next couple of years.
Do
So-
people buy those bonds? Somehow I got that in my head.
Yeah.
Somebody sort of kind
So
of,
it depends on how you go about
bonds.
doing it.
okay.
Again, very complicated stuff, and I'm definitely not the expert, but normally for a smaller bond like this, what you do is you shop it around to the banks.
Okay.
So you go to the local bank's choice one, whatever, and they can buy the bonds. And they're usually a very safe investment, right? Governments almost always pay their bills. So sometimes they like to load up and make a certain percentage based on a bond like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so you'll see that we're going to take a bond probably this budget year. We're also allocating about 64,000 for the parking lot number 9. That's the parking lot back behind the businesses on that same north side, between the backs of the businesses and Park Street. Now, 64,000 bucks only represents the engineering we're anticipating doing on that project. And then you'll see that same parking lot number 9 in 25-26 is 880,000. That's the initial estimate we have from the engineers. Of course, I always like to do things cheaper if we can, so we'll work on that. And then Pine Street, Park to Oregon, 25-26, $776,000. I think in this year's budget, we have the engineering already allocated, so that's why you're not seeing engineering for that project. Engineers have told us that the engineering they're doing now should still be good in the 2-year period. And Ms. Hannah, if I say something incorrect, please jump in.
Sure.
Okay. So fire department heavy rescue vehicle, you've already approved that. We are allocating that dollar amount into this year's budget for purchase. Water tower demolition, $350. So I have been asking the Department of Public Works to give me a better quote on that. I think that's very expensive. I think it can be done for less money. But it's a specialized type of project. There's just not that many companies out there that do that type of work. And I suspect that they have plenty of work to do. I think there's also probably some abatement issues there. There might be lead or something else up in there that would have to be abated before you can demo.
I understand there is lead.
Yeah, so there's some other issues here too. So if we don't demo, we have fears that the whole tower might collapse on its own, right? Which is obviously not something we want to see happen. So there's a couple options, depending on how long we plan to leave the water tower upright, okay? So I think one of the options is we invest about $75,000 that would replace concrete, exterior ladders, all sorts of things. And that would make it stable and upright and usable for a couple more years. If we don't plan to keep it up for more than a couple years, we could just fix the concrete underneath, because we think that's what's the stabilization issue that would prevent it from falling over. You're probably still looking at $20,000 to $30,000.
But our water really doesn't come from there.
Yeah, so that
That's an
tower has not been
emergency.
used, it has not been used at all in
Yeah.
20, 30 years.
So what did you mean then by 75,000 would make it usable?
So there are antennas on top of it. So we get paid a very small amount per year for some radio tower equipment that's up there. That's the only use it has. There's no water in there, it has not been used for water for many, many years. And it just,
It also needs to be painted if you're gonna keep it.
basically, it's
Doesn't
only a
even,
mark.
the pier's
That's what it is.
covered. You can't even see the pier.
So, I don't personally want to pay $350,000 for it, but we have to budget for it, right? So if that's the best we can do, we budget that amount, and we have to spend that amount. We could also get a quote that's less than that. And this goes back to if we have, a higher, than the actual bid comes in. So if we budget $350, it comes in at $250 or $200. There's a savings of $100,000+. We could then, with council's permission, allocate that towards something else, or we knock it off, whatever the deficit spending is, or put it back in the fund balance. There's a bunch of options at that point. Okay. 330 tennis or pickleball courts at your last, I think it was the last meeting, right? The gentleman came in and showed you guys the pickleball equipment. So what we propose here is that we have the money, but it's donation dependent. So we have a number of sources that we think we could get a donation of that size from. We've Rodney Church, Parks and Rec Department is working on that. But I don't want to allocate just general fund dollars for it, okay? And the primary reason is we've already established, I think it's 3 or 4 temporary pickleball courts behind the rec center. So last year, we paved over the old basketball court behind the rec center. It was $30,000. And then we went out and bought some movable pickleball court equipment. So we're going to turn that area into pickleball courts, and that'll be, I think, 3 or 4 additional courts that could be used this year. I think it's a good way to gauge how much interest there's going to be before we fully allocate $300,000+.
We currently have 2 or 3 every day, I
So,
believe.
yep, so
They're
on the,
used.
on the gym floor,
At the rec.
on the gym floor at the rec center.
Oh, inside.
Of course, the difficulty there is now you've got kids wanting to play basketball in the same way they want to play pickleball.
Right.
So we thought by moving it outside, you know, we also had basketball nets for that area, so we could turn that into basketball too if we wanted to. Yeah, I mean, eventually I think this is gonna happen. I wasn't prepared to spend that money this year, just because we have so many other needs.
What about Crampton Park? Is there a part of that that could be converted to pickleball?
So that is the pickleball courts at Craig.
Oh, I thought you said this was at the rec.
We already have the temporary.
Yeah, we already have it set up for temporary
At the
capital.
rec.
Yeah.
And this 330 is for the,
Now, again, I suspect that this is a high estimate. I believe this estimate came from Rowe. Most engineers like to very high estimates. I think you could probably do it for a lot less than that. And so one of the things I'm working with the Parks Department is to come up with a lower estimate or an actual bid of some kind, which would be substantially less than that. But for today's purposes, I'm just saying, let's put it in there. If we get the donation, we could go ahead and do it. Then the same rules apply, right? We have the money, we go out to bid comes 180, right? Now you guys can approve 180, and we didn't have to spend a full. 300,000, repaving of parking lot number 5. We went out and got a bid for, I think, 270-ish thousand to do a substantially better job with the drainage, because I know that was one of the concerns of the commission. This also takes care of the entire park area that's going to be between the parking lot area and the river. And this is a hard quote, so we can move forward with that at any time. But I didn't want to work on this area until after Lapeer Days. So this would be a post Lapeer Days, August, September project if you guys want to move forward.
so the $500 one that we were talking about is no longer.
$500.
Wasn't the bid that we all agreed on like 500?
So there was, so Rowe, again, this is engineers for it, came in and I think at the meeting he said it was $700,000. But then when I actually looked at the numbers, it was 800,000. It was like 790 something. I can't in good conscience recommend that. If you guys want to add another 500,000-ish, is that what it is? $500-ish thousand, we could do that project. Just the recommendation from your staff is going to go with this project.
Which is the minor scrape and resurface, or the lesser scrape and resurface, along with still losing or turning to grass, that parking right along the
I
river.
don't think it's grass. I think they're going to put river rock in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's going to be more of a park atmosphere with trees and asphalt path and stuff.
And if we go like this route, it still will last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Even likely, it's not that it's gonna last just the 2 or 3 years that we thought.
Yep, so as you guys know, prior, this was before me, you had the outdoor ice rink that they put down that pad, and I don't know how long it's been there, I'm guessing 3-ish years. That was a really thin layer, like an inch, and it is still in great shape. So the proposal, I think it's 2.5 or 3 inches, it's gonna be the entire thing, they're improving the drainage. You know, I was out there with Parks, the asphalt company, and DPW, and they all agreed on this plan. So that's why I'm making this recommendation.
Okay.
Cat loader for the Department of Public Works. So I actually had to go out and take a picture of the cat loaders because, you know, I don't know about you guys, I don't know what cat loaders are. So I got a
I
good
raised
picture.
3 boys, I can tell you.
I didn't yeah, that's not good. What it means, I don't
So-
think.
I went out and took a picture of it, if you guys
I
want to see
thought
what
it was
it
kind of
actually
like a
is.
big shovel.
My husband probably drove one today.
That's a Komatsu, right? That's it's a different brand, right?
Yes, so he's on point, you do have boys, obviously. Cat is the brand,
Yeah, I was right. It just has a big shovel.
but this is the small one,
You're right.
if you can believe that. And what the Department of Public Works is telling me is that because it's so small, it's not nearly as useful to them. Plus, this particular one has some maintenance issues, which is making it very expensive to keep. So their proposal is that they replace this one, get whatever credit we can for it, and replace it with a bigger cat loader. Now, this one went down recently. I think it was budgeted at what, 270 or 275. So we're really penciling it in. Price dropped to about $28,000. Rec center water slide, again, unfortunately donation dependent. You've probably been on it. Unfortunately, the stairs, back when they installed them a million years ago, is some kind of metal that the chlorine water is making rust. It looks very bad.
It looks terrible.
It's not dangerous, it's not gonna hurt you in any way, but it looks horrible. And unfortunately, again, very highly specialized type of thing where only so many people make it. And it's very, very expensive, so $200,000. But again, this is one of those things where the rec center is supposed to get a huge donation. And I'd like to wait until we get that donation to replace the slide.
Is it gonna be bigger?
I've been
I asked
hammering on Rodney about this because you'd think you could find something else that fits. He says, no, it's almost the exact same model that's there. So next time we'll get one that does a loop to loop, okay?
So that isn't just the ladder that is rusty.
I asked him about that too. I said, is there any way to just replace the ladder? Is there some way to just put some kind of plastic or rubber overlay on top of the stairs? And he says, no, this is the only option. Yep. Which again is perhaps why I'm saying, hey, let's not just run out and spend the money. I'd like to keep investigating, or I'd like to see other options. I want to give it more time, basically. All right, lean-to structure at the DPW garage, 160. We're going to split this up in 3 different ways for 3 different funds, so it's only about $50,000 for each of the funds. So there's a big, I think it's 200-ish feet, maybe 250 feet long side of the building there. And we're going to take you guys there eventually, so it would have been helpful to do that before this meeting. But the inside of their garage is just jam-packed. There's no space. You know, there's a center aisle where they back cars out and then they leave. But they got all sorts of stuff inside that building, which probably doesn't have to be in there, but they need the weather protection, right? If you have something that's metal, it's getting rained on all the time, it's going to rust out sooner than it probably should. So this lean-to structure will go across the side of the DPW garage. It'll protect it from the rain, and they can start taking some of these big things that are not vehicles, like the snow blades, you know, for the trucks and stuff. Put them out into the lean-to structure. It doesn't get rained on. So.
I have a question about that. When I hear lean-to structure, I think chintzy. So I was wondering why there wasn't maybe an idea to just build a whole nother building for extra equipment.
Funny, I said the same exact thing. Who was I talking? Was it you that we were talking about pole barns and how much your pole barn costs? Yeah, it's a lot of money for a lean-to structure. You know, and I hammered the DPW. I hammered all the department heads on all of these things. He is, and it wasn't just him. We had Ross in there as well, second in command at DPW. This is what they say it costs. They've got quotes for it. He says they actually got the first quote that was like $190. And I said, no, we'll get a second quote. They got a $160 quote. So these things cost money. I don't think it's going to be chintzy. I don't think it's going to be cheap. God, I hope not. At $160, right?
So what is the cost of a pole barn?
Well, so, you know, you think of a lean-to as being, you know, a small thing, open sides, and that's absolutely correct. It's the length. This is 200-ish feet long. It's a huge, long structure. Pole barns, you know, first of all, I don't think they really make them that big, not in the residential sense, you know, at least. But if you had a 200-foot long pole barn sometime, it's going to be a heck of a lot more than $160,000. Now,
I don't
could
think
we?
there's space there really for a pole barn
No.
anyway, is there?
So we actually own the whole block. We
I know.
own the center building property, which by the way, we could just turn that into a DPW garage.
Or City Hall.
Yeah, that's goodness. We're gonna get you a tour of that building too.
Sorry,
It's
sarcastic.
Apparently in rough shape. But I mean, yes, we could probably go out and get a much smaller pole barn that's enclosed. But my guys are telling me that they're gonna fill this.
I like the idea, you get to use the existing structure and for what they want it for, which is basically just parking vehicles. It gets them their barn back to work in, and farmers do it. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not opposed to going back to them and saying, I want an analysis of how big a pole barn could you get for this price versus the lean-to. That's certainly no problem doing that. But one way or the other, they've got stuff sitting out in the rain and the snow and everything else that we'd just rather than not do.
So when you say lean-to, you're gonna use an existing wall and put a roof, so we're only missing one. So that's why it would be separate pole barn might be.
Possibly, yeah.
Well, that would require building permits, like with that, oh, that's its whole own other thing. Then you need to dig out the asphalt that's there, pour cement, put footings, like that's a whole different ball of wax.
It would be substantially
Completely.
smaller, the pole barn. And again, maybe that's something we should investigate, but this is what they asked for. So I will tell him that we'd like to investigate the possibility, but either way, I'd like to keep the money in there for doing something. Again, just because it says lean-to structure, doesn't mean that's what we have to do, because eventually this would come back to you guys for approval. All right, I will not pretend to understand what the wastewater treatment plant wants, other than the fact that we don't want our toilets backing up, so we generally give them what they want. Oxidation ditch cleaning repair, I have a passing familiarity with how wastewater treatment plants work. This is part of the cleaning up of the work, right? Mini excavator for the DPW department, there's a lot of negotiation between staff on this one. Department of Public Works likes their toys, right? Lots of, vehicles that they'd like to have. They can't have them all as much as they would like. So we did some switching around this year with the CIP, which I'm sure Ms. Hannah could point out in greater detail than I can. But they originally wanted another vehicle, and I said, well, how about we switch to the mini excavator? So the mini excavator is a much smaller vehicle, and it can be used in much more confined spaces than some of the bigger vehicles that they have. And I think for that reason alone, especially on, so like the lead line replacement stuff, right? If you have a big vehicle, you can end up taking up 2 full lanes to do the twisting and turning that are required to make the movements. This vehicle, really small. You probably only take up 1 lane. So we pushed a couple of things into the future to get this into this year's budget. But I think it'd be a useful addition to their fleet.
yeah, I have some questions too.
I just wondered the difference between a mini excavator, because they just got done saying that their cat loader's too little.
Yeah,
So,
Yep.
so
so the cat loader it's a gargantuan thing, right? And we'll take you out there, you see all these vehicles, but that's moved for or used for snow removal. Big, like 3 yards of dirt in the thing. A mini excavator, it's a tiny little thing. Matter of fact, that's-
like a scud.
No, it's a little bigger.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the things we moved into the next couple of years CIP is a skid steer
Skid
loader. Yeah, so it's about that size, but it's more of the, forgive my, it's like one of the things that's got the thing. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. It's like,
It's a teeny tiny backhoe.
sure.
But not a backhoe, because they wanted to get rid of the backhoe.
Yes, they're getting rid of the
Right.
backhoe.
My question is, how many backhoes do they have?
I
Because they also want to get another one in 28, 29.
Yeah, so I think they've got 2 backhoes, and one of them's gonna go for this mini excavator. And then 28, 29 will reevaluate, right? And again, sometimes this is a maintenance issue. And they gotta have these pieces of equipment, right? And sometimes if you've got one that's down and you need one, you gotta have a second one to be able to use it, right?
Yeah.
I hate the logic, but there is logic to it, so. But gold star for you for reading it.
Sure. Well, I had another question on there too. I don't know if this is in the, so they also want a skid loader and a new tractor loader.
Yeah. So
And a backhoe. So the benefit of the backhoe is you get the tractor loader along with the digging apparatus on the back.
Yeah, again, I don't pretend to know all of these that they have. But we did have lots of words about the tractor situation as well, because what I discovered is that we've got multiple departments that have tractors. And I don't think we need multiple departments that have tractors. The tractor that they use at the wastewater treatment plant can be used at the cemetery, which can be used at whatever parks might be. So we really truly are taking a hard look at this,
Okay.
about what their real needs are, and you'll see with the zero-turn mowers. Apparently we budget to buy a zero-turn mower every single year for the department, Parks Department, because they put up a torque, right? They absolutely destroy those things. And so it's on a multi-year replacement schedule where we buy one, get rid of one, okay? Well, this year, I think it was wastewater treatment plant asked for a zero-turn mower as well. These things are expensive. And I said, why do you need one? You know, do you have one? And they're like, oh yeah, we've got one. It's 20 years old. It has 700 hours on it. And if you know anything about mowers, 20 years, 700 hours is nothing. So why do you have a whole freaking mower out there to do 700 hours worth of work in 20 years? It just doesn't make sense. So we've already tasked the Parks Department with taking their mower over to the wastewater treatment plant. So we're not replacing a $15,000, $20,000 pump. So good questions. I don't have.
Great. Well, I'm just glad to hear
Answers
that
for
you're thinking about those things,
Yeah.
because that's what my takeaway was. Boy, it seems like if we were sharing our equipment,
Yeah.
we could get away with
No.
less, have better equipment,
Yep.
less of it.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. And this is part of the process, right? Today's an overview. We're not going to be doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, the planning commission, staff, and you guys, as part of this process, we will be looking at future and saying, well, why do you need this? You know, can you extend it another year? Can't you buy the skid steer loader? One of the things that they want it for is, so you know those manhole covers out in front of like McDonald's where it's down like a foot and you bounce your car over it every time? Apparently the skid steer loader has an attachment that you can core that out and then replace it. Okay? Well, the attachment's like $20,000, so you got the skid steer loader for 80, attachment. But if we get that attachment, we don't have to go buy some other piece of equipment because of the attachment, makes all the sense in the world. So it's a very complex thing.
That's why they bought the fancy truck last year, because we can just buy attachments
Yep.
instead of a whole new ginormous thing.
I just wanted to add that the cemetery doesn't get to plan when they need to dig a grave. So I understand why they would need their own there, because you don't plan for that. And so what if they have 4 funerals, but somebody else is using it over at the water treatment plant?
There's
Yeah.
actually a contractor, I think, right?
Yeah, we do have a
Correct on
contractor.
that? We have a contractor who does that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this successfully for a long time,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean we can't change things up a little bit here and there to be more efficient.
So contractor takes all the grades.
All right, police vehicle replacements, 117, is that a yearly cost? Because that's a little bit higher, I think.
That is for 2
Okay,
vehicles.
so they do have a schedule. You don't want to have a police vehicle that's got 400,000 miles on it. So they do replacement on a regular schedule, get rid of the one that's got the highest mileage, it's oldest. That's, you know, you're gonna see that every year, I think.
Now, do you check out other dealerships, like, I think their last ones were Fords.
So we're still
Do they
feeling,
prefer Chevs or?
we're still feeling the after effects of COVID in
Yeah.
buying police vehicles.
Right.
One major change we did make this year is we're going from Ford Explorers to, I believe, Chevy Tahoes. So Chevy Tahoes are more available than the Fords are,
Okay.
and they're also bigger.
That's a big
Yeah,
plus.
and so those guys, once they put on their belts and everything,
Well, yeah, there's a lot of equipment.
there's a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's a smart move. I don't think there's a gas penalty really at all, at least a negligible one. But the availability of those
I'm just
Chevys.
curious.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, another issue is that we had some of the police equipment for Ford Explorers in the garage.
That's right.
So we didn't want to buy a Chevy, so all the equipment was bad. So I think we bought one new Ford, and then we're just moving to Chevy after that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, police fire carports, you got Jeremy to talk you guys through that one. You actually have a question, or
I do.
do you have to go to the bathroom?
No, just, sorry. Usually we repurpose the police vehicles if it's still in good condition and
Yep.
go to
If we need them,
department head.
the building officials' car is an old police vehicle, the DPW director, Reginald police vehicle. So if they're still in good shape and they're not, they're not worth the credit or the value to sell it, we will keep it around for various purposes. All right, Triton aerators, again, wastewater treatment plant, we'll go out and visit there and they can explain all this stuff to you. I'm assuming aerators means they're pumping air into something to do something. Which is funny because the wastewater treatment plant operator in Cedar said, I visited the plant more than all the other previous city managers combined. So I should know this stuff, but again, it's a very highly specialized thing. All right, Genesee Street Bridge. This is actually really good news stuff, so I really like this. Engineering, always your cost in a grant situation, so that's gonna be about $85,000-ish. That's this year. We have to have a grant match, I'm guessing 10%. In next year, that's $400,000. But the big money is 26-27, which is a full grant of $4 million for Pleasant Ridge. So that's awesome. But we want
I
you to.
read 2, so now it's gonna be 4, possibly.
Jeff was told that there's actually 2 different grants for this project.
Oh.
Yes, so originally, the one grant was about $2 million, and then they were able to secure another grant that will pick up the cost.
Wonderful. We've only been waiting for this for 10 plus years.
It took me 6 years to arrange for a grant for something in Cedar. It takes time.
Yes.
Do we know how long that project will take?
We did a bridge in
Never- I
Cedar.
mean, we never really
It took
know.
us almost 6 months. Yeah. Now, thankfully, the area it's in, you can get around it, and it's nothing super important right there. But yeah, Genesee's going to be closed for a while. It's going to be a gigantic pain in the butt.
I'm just curious how the ambulance, they're right there, how will they get to the east the quickest way? There isn't.
Yeah, I mean, just like everything else in this world, we'll develop a plan beforehand, and we'll let them know. All right, and then you see McCormick Lift Station. I feel bad. I was looking at this again. $75,000 is just the engineering for this project. This is not the full maintenance amount. So you'll see that in the next year's budget, you're looking at a $500,000 project at least. But, I again, grilled Jeff on this one. I said, really, you guys spend that much money on a lift station maintenance? He says, yeah, this is the most important lift station in the city. If this one breaks, everything's overflowing. So want to make sure that is well taken care of.
Seems like they're at these lift stations quite frequently doing maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
So, being well serviced. I mean, I see them out at my corner all the time and down on Oregon Road. So they're keeping up with it, which
Yeah.
is great.
This is one of those things where people don't even think about it because they don't see it. These are big,
Right.
usually underground pits, or they're just a nondescript looking building. Again, we can get you out to see some of this stuff if you're interested in it. I've seen it 100 times, so it's not that interesting to me. But if you understand what they do, where they're at, it's very interesting stuff. So another paragraph there, it just kind of shows you dollar amounts, percentages, and some of the other minor stuff that didn't make the major, Apparently, we put money aside every year for scrub steel for the streets. We're continuing to do work on 18 Nipissing Street. I just had that phone call yesterday about that. He's supposed to get me a full budget for the demo coming up shortly. They did find asbestos in the basement. It's a very minor amount. So that shouldn't cost much to abate. They were not able to get up on the roof though, so we're still arranging to figure that out. And the reason I mention that is because if you can't access a location to do an asbestos test, you have to assume it's asbestos under state law,
Correct.
which will drive up your cost. So we're hoping to get them up there to actually do some testing so we can show it's not asbestos, which will reduce our demo costs.
Are you gonna get a bid at all on refurbishing or reconstructing that? Since there is such a small amount of asbestos and we could use some office and.
So the last council directed me to demo. So that's how I've been operating.
It's horrible.
It's my professional opinion that this building is not worth saving.
I've never been in a wood building
It's in very, very
Ever.
rough shape.
Well,
anywhere.
And I appreciate that too, but I would love to just have that bid, so, because what if because none of us are specialists in that, could we have somebody that's a specialist give us that instead of just demoing it, because we could use that space.
I can't think of a single use for the city. Because we spent quite a bit of time, I know you're just getting on the council, but we spent a lot of time discussing this, looking at it, talking with experts. I can't think of anything to use it for. Mayor
It's
Barry?
full of mold, you'd have to dose it down or put 500,000 in mold remediation before touching anything else. I
There-
promise it needs to be dosed.
Animals,
Yeah,
everything.
I just would.
There's
I
a-
think I read somewhere in here that there was tentative cost analysis.
For the demo? So,
Yeah, in comparison to refurnishing it, the refurnishing would actually cost the city.
I know, I haven't seen that. I'm just.
Yeah, if you read
I'm
through,
curious.
if you read through the majority of it, you'll find
Well,
it's in there somewhere.
so let me just give the very brief version. So, this is coming from the DDA and the chamber and all sorts of conversations I had. This building is located on the very periphery of the downtown. It's way past Saginaw. It's next to, the police, that boys and the Mexican restaurant. From what I understand, that area of town has just had a hard time having businesses survive. So the first part of it is having a location where businesses don't survive, or they have a very difficult time with it. Now, again, I've not been around, I understand it used to be a dry cleaner, which is where the pollution comes from, it's been a million other businesses, nothing's ever really survived there. It also doesn't have parking, there's like 82 parking spaces, so parking would be a substantial issue. I then talked to the DDA and I said, well, what about the DDA? Would you like to maybe rent it from the city, so that you would have your own building, not have to rent it from somewhere else? Then we did a brief cost analysis of what it would cost to actually fix the building versus rent. And we made a determination that for the amount of money you would have to put into the building to make it usable, there is no way you could actually rent it out for a price enough to cover your bills. You're looking at such a long payback period that the rental price just wouldn't be worth it. So we also talked about, well, what other uses would we have for it instead of trying to like refurbish it, because again, it's in really rough shape. Maybe turn it into a storage warehouse or something.
How long ago was it used?
So it's
Was it
been,
occupied?
it's been vacant for a long time, long before I was here. So,
Excuse me, heavy sigh over there?
5+ at least. And it talks about this project on page 27.
Okay.
A little bit,
I'm just asking questions because that's
Oh,
how I learn, so.
I just wondered if we taled about this a lot at the meetings and you were at most of the meetings.
I
and
watched
them
them,
online.
but I'm not privy to all
I
the
just wondered.
details. So,
anyway, so demolition is what we determined to do, and then after demolition, the talk was about turning it into a street side or street level deck that would become a public park.
the deck would become a public park or you, because that's flooded almost all the time.
So the deck would be at street level.
Right.
Does the water go to street level?
No,
but
no,
that
the
park
water is in the park. This is
Right.
up and then it's kind of,
Right. I
A
know,
big hill?
I've been back, I know. I just,
I don't think the building side gets flooded,
no, the building.
right, because there's a whole parking lot there.
well, it definitely comes up to very close to the building when it does flood because the river's right there. So I just am concerned about erosion if it's a,
Well, I mean, so, I've been down there by the river. It is elevated. And I didn't see any evidence of flooding, because normally you would see flooding on the walls and stuff. But this is part of why you would put a deck in versus a basement that would be flooded. Because again, that's one of the things we talked about. If we were to use it for some municipal purpose, maybe we use the basement for storage, right? But we didn't want to have it, because it's very wet down there, which is a problem, when you're trying to store paper. I think the deck idea is a good idea. All right, so page 6, this is just the program information itself, more of a policy document than anything else if you want to take a look at it. This is kind of how we run the capital improvement program. So I thought this was a great infographic put together by staff. It gives you a decent idea of where we're spending the money, just from a physical standpoint. Now, there's a lot of things that didn't make the list here. see, I don't get to use these very often, so I'm gonna just point this and try to virtualize. For example, you see down here, Parks Department. This is just the downtown area. We didn't have all the parks on it, so we didn't get to put, here's Crampton Park and here's Crampton Park. But it gives you a good idea. We're not concentrating this in one location. This is spread out throughout the whole city. So we really do take a holistic approach to spending our dollar bills throughout the entire community. Just, interesting infographic you guys can look at. So that is a bulk of what I want to talk about today. We are going to go through a couple more things, but I just want to make sure that you guys are kind of comfortable with that's what we're going to be doing this year. And that's the important part, because that's what's going to come back to you April 3rd, which you guys just got the big book. So
And
you are users.
yes,
Yes,
those
sir.
budgets are there.
What can I do for you?
I've never really been a big fan of the scrub seal stuff. Has there been any more research on the longevity of how long it actually lasts?
So, again, not an expert.
Everybody thinks they're getting,
Brand new road.
it looks new, but it's not new.
So it's not, you shouldn't look at it from the perspective of getting new road, right? It's not, you're not giving somebody a brand new road. It's a lot like crack sealing.
Hmm.
So, we could put down a road or a parking lot and then just do no maintenance whatsoever, and it's gonna last X number of years. But if you do the type of maintenance, you extend it year by year by year. So, let's pretend you put a new parking lot in and it lasts 10 years with no maintenance. But if you do the micro seal, the scrub seal, the crack filling and pothole filling, now that 10-year parking lot becomes a 20-year parking lot. So the scrub seal is cheap. It makes it look new. And it does provide a certain amount of maintenance. So again, this stuff all comes from the engineers. This is not like me saying, "Yeah, go put some scrub seal out there." So for whatever reason, the experts on roads say that this is a good use for money.
There might be projects that have happened in the past. I know they did Genesee Street
We've done
6
a lot.
years ago, did the whole thing, and that was basically gone before they redid it.
So it's certainly
Probably
something.
mentioned 4 years, but that's a
Again,
busy, that's a busy road.
I don't know the history of the Department of Public Works with the engineering company and how they've come to a conclusion about how to do these things, right? I understand it just based on my history in the previous community with a different engineering firm. So I don't know if Rowe has the best, knowledge about this stuff. We certainly could discuss that with them. I guess my assumption was that they did. And we could also go out and get a different engineering firm to deal with our roads. We could put together a more in-depth study about road maintenance. I can't do everything in 10 months.
Right.
So my assumption was that the plan put together by the engineers with scrub sealing was an appropriate plan. If you're second questioning that, we can do more work on it.
No, this is less than what we have been putting in the CIP, isn't it?
It's been the same amount per year.
Has it?
Like 50,000 every year, right?
Yes, 50,000 for major
Oh, you know what,
roads,
maybe,
50,000
I
for
always
local.
remember it being 120, so maybe they always put it together.
Probably,
Okay.
yes, they do split it.
But
between
it is
major and local.
120. It's just separate.
There's two different funds.
All right, I'm on page 12. So funding by year, this gives you just an oversight of each year currently what we're planning on spending. I'm not a super numbers guy 6 years in the future, so I don't think this is all that informative for me. I know this helps the finance department a lot, but it's just different ways to look at the same information, right? So that continues on to 13. I find page 14 and on more useful to me. So this is where you're going to start seeing projects by the category and, more importantly for me, the funding source. Because I always find it very helpful to understand where the money's going to come from for the various projects. So I'm not going to go line by line, but interesting stuff to point out just on page 14. You'll see the lean-to structure. TIFA 2 is going to pick up 53,000 of that. The TIFA organizations, they do a great amount of work in this community. And that's part of their job. They're there to help us out with infrastructure costs. So, but, for us, it's important because it's not coming out of general fund.
I'm not sure where I should jump in with my comments or suggestions, and I've been sitting here hoping that it would come up. But there's 3 points that I want to point out at this time. 18 East Nipissing Street, and I have no problem taking that down. I want to point out Park Street, and I want to point out the river.
Okay.
Those 3 things. In my opinion, our river is the diamond in the rough and could be the crown jewel for this community.
Okay.
So I would rather see the money from Park Street, instead of changing that to a 2-way street at this time. Let's see how things go with the city and put that money into cleaning up the river and making it beautiful and utilitarian and for sports. Because we have a lot of people who like kayaking. And I would rather see that become a focus for the city to draw people into the city, into the parks.
Okay.
Therefore, then, the 18 Nipissing Street being turned into a deck because the river will be made much nicer and usable makes more sense to me.
Okay.
So I've just been turning that around in my mind, and I wasn't sure at what point I should be able to bring up that.
Sure.
I know that you really like the idea of changing Park Street into the 2-way street, and I have not a problem with that, but maybe not now. I would like to see our city become known for activities, sports activities, and beauty, and bring more businesses downtown via that way rather than a 2-way street, because I don't see the 2-way street as bringing people downtown or being necessary until we get more people.
So can I address that briefly, because that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's why I had 3 things to
Sure.
kind of pull together.
Yep, so I fully understand and appreciate the draw of water in communities. I visit lots of communities every year, and I see how cities are able to utilize water, whether it be a lake or a river or whatever. So I agree, very important. 18 Nipissing, I appreciate that you understand kind of the vision I have there. Cut down the trees that are adjacent, well, the scrubby trees that are adjacent to the deck, so you have this beautiful overlook of the river and the grass field lines, okay? The parking lot, we're gonna spend at least $50,000 making that whole area next to the river there a park area. So we are turning it into a usable space. And that's, I think, the biggest part of our accessible river, right? I mean, most of the rest of the river that's in the park areas, it has trees and kind of scrub next to it. That is the biggest section in our entire community where you have ready access to the river. So those are at least 2 projects I'm proposing that are, as you said, the jewel of the community, right? Operating. Now, as far as the CIP is concerned, this is, in my opinion, not the correct vehicle for doing what your vision is. Because, again, bless your heart, I don't know what you mean by let's make it beautiful, let's make it this. I think what we probably need to do is get you on a parks committee of some kind so that you can start leading that effort. But it takes a lot of planning to get that kind of stuff done. And your vision needs to be part of the plans. So we have, I'm assuming, a parks and recreation plan. And so if it's not part of that plan, that's what we use to do things like that, which then guide us to budget for it and CIP.
And when should we be working with the Flint Water Shed Coalition and
You're working with a lot of people on
with a
that.
lot of different organizations that actually still do a yearly cleanup of the river?
It's gonna be a special event here shortly too.
Kayak, you've probably done it.
Mike, can I ask on the Park Street thing, it says it's a high priority. Who decides the priority?
Could I comment on that? Because I just wanted to point out that the DPW identified some time ago that Park Street needed to be reconstructed. So that project, I mean,
And there's a
not
there's a
the
second part
2-way
too.
parcel, okay, that's a different part of it.
Yeah.
But the PACER rating studies and this.
It's the infrastructure underneath too.
Yes, absolutely. It is the water and sewer underneath that road that also needs to be done. And this project has been in the CIP for a number of years.
Yep.
And it has been moved out, but it's, being moved forward to actually get the project done.
Yeah, so she hit on a point which I hadn't gotten to yet, which is ignore the whole two-way thing, right? That is based on just my observations of the public, the mayor's commented on this many times. We think it could be a two-way street. Now, again, I wasn't here when they changed it, but I find, heck, I did this just the other day. I blew past my turn and I wanted to go back. And I couldn't because I had to go like these one-way streets all the way around, right? So we're going to pay the engineering firm to decide, can it be done and would it be beneficial to us? But that's a separate issue. The redoing Park Street is PACER ratings. It's one of the most beat up roads in the city. But more importantly than that, there are some huge infrastructure needs underneath that road. So really, if nothing else, that road should be done because of the infrastructure underneath it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Pine Street, so Park and Pine, right next to each other. There's something called mobilization costs. Whenever you bring an asphalting company in, a construction company of some kind, they charge you what's called mobilization costs. And if you can do two projects that are right next door to each other, you can do it as one project. Mobilization costs can be 15% of the total cost of your project. What is 15% of $3 or $4 million? 60, yeah, so huge money. So if we're going to be doing Park Street, because of the infrastructure problems underneath, if we're going to do Pine Street, because it is, again, one of the worst roads in the city, I want to do them at the same time. And again, I'm doing this based on what people tell me, the PACER ratings. There's a whole bunch of information that's out there that identifies these things. I don't know who said it's a high priority. I assume
You
the
just said hi, I was asking.
I assume the Department of Public Works said that. But if you guys think that there are other better projects to put out there, let me know. But this is all the information that I have while I'm making that recommendation.
Well, I think it also, Christmas would be the business over the parking lot, which you're talking about anyway, but they do want better access for their stores, for people to get in.
Yeah, and that parking lot there.
And if you're gonna redo the road, if you've got plans, I don't know, something to consider that, so.
Yeah, the parking lot
Save
definitely is in
money.
bad shape,
Instead of putting more money.
but a lot of
into
it
down
is
the
stuff.
road. I don't know, something.
Why would
So
you
rear
want
entrances
one
is something we'll work on. Of course, they have to be on board with it.
Way.
But there's other things we can do back there. So, we've talked, I think you and I have talked about this personally, but, we could change how it's laid out so you can get more parking there. But it is shocking to me how, if you get to a parking lot and you get out of your car and you look to the businesses, you don't know where to go to get to the front of the business. We got the alleyway next to the ice cream place, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in that parking lot, do I immediately know that's where I'm supposed to go? No, you don't. So we need signage back there. We need asphalt painting back there so that, humans naturally do that, right? You look to the ground, you see a path, you follow it. Same thing with is it Cedar Street next to the pharmacy? That's another access point to the front. We should be directing people to these locations with good signage and asphalt painting. But the thing I think that drives me the most nuts is all the dumpsters. Those dumpsters look atrocious.
And they're never in the same spot.
They're never in the same spot, but I was walking my dog through the downtown a while back, and one of these dumpsters was basically on the city sidewalk. And people are careless. They take, glass bottles and they toss it at the dumpster. My dog had to walk through broken glass on the city sidewalk because the dumpsters were wherever they got dropped off. And again, I don't know the history. I don't know how that all happened. As far as I can tell, this is a city parking lot. So why are we allowing private businesses to just leave their dumpsters everywhere and make our city look bad?
Was there not an ordinance at one time? I think it changed when they redid that parking lot on the other side, the south side of Matheson.
Well, in any case,
When they redid the parking lot, they made it different.
my point is, I think this is going to be one of those absolutely transformational projects for the city,
Huge.
which is going to make our downtown look so nice and so much more usable. I went to Wood Chips 2 days ago for lunch, and this is when I got lost and turned around down the street. I, the city manager, do not feel comfortable going into the rear parking lot to then have to walk to the front to find a place, right? If I don't feel comfortable about that, how does a visitor to our community feel? So I think we need to do a lot of work on those parking lots, and this is the opening salvo, let's call it that.
May I ask a question about the dumpsters?
Yeah.
Do the individual stores have different contracts with different people who dump them?
I don't know. But what I do know is if we're going to allow people to have dumpsters on our property, they should be in enclosures. Beyond that, we could mandate that they all use one person. Because if you don't, then you're not allowed to have dumpster, because it's on our property.
It's funny on the other
Wouldn't they
side.
be required to use one of the 3 companies that we
Have a license. Yeah, I don't
recently have a
know.
license for within the city of Lapeer?
I don't know if it's that same way for dumpsters versus trash pickup.
Yeah.
But again, we could mandate that. We could. But what happens when the business now says, well, if you're going to do that, then I don't want a dumpster.
So
you
on,
want to get a choice.
on the other side, on the nice parking lot side,
Yeah.
the one whole row that has easy access to their dump, because there isn't far corners.
Mhm.
This whole side, they don't have any trash out because they can get to their dumpster easily. And then on the other side, it seems like everybody has a bin right at the back of the
Yeah.
door. And you can tell it's just a little bit too far away for them to want to take theirs all the way. So just when you think about that, that's a big sprawled out parking lot,
Yeah, it's definitely going to be something that we're going to spend a lot of time designing.
And you don't want to make the dumpster the centerpiece, but
No, you want
it's not going to get used
You want to put them up the
because it's
periphery,
too far
but
away.
dumpster enclosures also have a huge impact on litter. Because, if it's a windy day, it stays inside the enclosure, it doesn't go out. All right, anyways, so from 14 on, again, I'm not going to get into all of it unless you guys have specific questions, but you're seeing on page 15, there's some big costs there in the equipment fund. Something else you're going to hear from me in the budget. No, you've already used your 2. The equipment fund, I think, has some problems, structural problems, and this is not just the city of Lapeer, this is every community. If you have a mild winter and the rental rates are not being used because the snowplow trucks are not out there pushing snow, that money that otherwise would have been rental money going into this fund is not going into the fund. So when we have to go buy something out of that fund, you don't have the money because you have a mild winter, right? So we may end up having to put some cash infusion into that equipment fund from the general fund. I just want you to be aware of that. It's a totally normal thing. I just wish it wasn't. Also, aero boards. I had to learn what this was because I didn't know what it was. These are these big boards that you put in front of a construction zone with an arrow. Go this way, right? Anyways, I just thought that was funny because I didn't know what aero boards.
Got that one.
All right.
My question on that though is, how bright will they be? Because you know how some of the new cars, their headlights at night?
Well, I hope
That's
they,
just a question to think about when we get ready to check into it,
yeah, and again, this is,
Because that's safety as well.
there's a lot of things I'm trying to change about how the city operates. And one of them is I think there needs to be better consultation between management and department. Some departments are great at it, some are less great at it. But, more minds that are involved in the process, I think better decisions are made. So, for example, the aero boards, just a quick story. So there's an intersection by my house on the west side of state where it was just the old style lights, right? And the new style lights, traffic lights, have what they call a backboard. It's like a black kind of surround. It's got reflective lights on it, right? So if you have a power outage, the light's not operating if it doesn't have a generator, but your headlights will still hit the reflection, right? You'll still see that there's a light there. And so this one intersection, major intersection, lots of cars, there was a power outage, and I saw 2 vehicles like that because they're both doing 55 miles an hour. They didn't see the light because it was night, and their lights weren't reflecting anything because there was no backboard. Okay, so I got on the road commission about that, and it was replaced. They now have a reflective backboard. But aero boards, anything that's got reflection, anything that's got power backup, anything that's bright with LEDs instead of the old incandescents. Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of decision making in the future where we do better decision making. If you're still on 15, I'd also point out just next year, lots of money right? We're going from 465 up to 111. One of the big things is the vacuum truck, $580,000. Necessary piece of equipment, but we have the vacuum truck, which will turn in for credit, which I think would be $300,000.
Yes, we'll get a good return.
Yep. So it's a maintenance nightmare. You want to keep those newer so that you don't end up spending as much money on maintenance. But I'm scaring you now because I don't want it to be as scary next year. $580,000 purchase, but we'll have a credit of $300,000.
And that equipment vacuums, leaves, and sweeps and.
No, I'm pretty sure
What all
this-
does
I
it do?
think this
This
is
is sewer.
Yeah.
Sewer only.
This is sewer.
Okay. Oh, okay, well, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a question about an $18,500 toolbox.
No, it's the big shop toolboxes.
Yeah,
How
good
many
question.
of those? How many of those do we get for that much money?
So again, not a mechanic, but I've been to Harbor Freight, and those big toolboxes, they're expensive. Like, that is a major investment for mechanics. And those guys take those toolboxes with them, with the shit, they move shops, right? If that's what they're talking about. It could also be toolboxes for pickup trucks, which are probably pretty expensive. But I will circle that and make sure that I get you a better answer for that.
There's,
It says.
Yep, so we will get into the
It
the
is.
back part of this. So the whole back part, the whole back part, which I'm not gonna go into, has all the sheets that explain what these projects are. I'm just not flipping to it right now. I'm trying to do it extemporaneously because I don't want to be here for 6 hours. But yeah, so there should be something in the back that will
It's
specifically,
page 44.
there's,
specifically look for this one because you brought the question up. So. All right, so then you see local streets, page 16. And again, I'm not gonna go every single page. But lots of money, we're spending lots of money on the roads in the next couple of years. A, because it needs it, and B, because I think that's what the public wants from us, right? And so this goes all the way through page 20. I think that's the most important part of the whole thing, just so you can see the projects and where the money is expected to come from. We spent a lot of money doing this, don't we? I see $45 million down there, a total price over the next 6 years. So, Ms. Hannah, could you do me a favor? Could you plant more of those money trees out there for me? Sure. All right. So this is the part where I'm going to absolutely breeze through. So please, if you have questions, make them very short and easy to answer. You had a question? No?
No,
Okay, good. All right. So page 22 is where you start getting into the next 130 pages. Every time that we have a CIP that we propose, those department heads propose, they got to put together a sheet detailing what it is that they're proposing, why they need it, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna take that back. That really starts on 31.
Right.
Yeah, please.
While we're here on page 22, you and I had some emails back and forth about the cameras, and I see here that it says City Hall cameras.
Yep.
What is that referring to?
Yeah, so I think City Hall is the only city building that does not have security cameras. Unfortunately, people get grumpy here. And so I think it's important for the safety of our staff to have cameras on the inside of the building to help protect us from angry, grumpy citizens. Of course, on the first floor, we also have street level windows, which can be bashed in, and you could have intruders come in to City Hall at night. But on top of that, we also plan to have cameras installed on the exterior of the building, which can help with slip and fall claims. It can help with vehicles and people who commit crime somewhere else in the city. They happen to walk past our building. I'm actually shocked we don't have cameras already. Now, the original estimate, I think, was $28,000, and we got it down to, I think, 13.
Pretty good for this size building.
So this is going to be the same camera group that is doing, doing the housing department. And I don't know, did they use the same folks in Rec Center, or is that a different group?
I believe it is the same group.
So they're,
Yes.
they're a good local group, and they do good work.
The state also requires
Oh, yeah,
that by
elections.
2026, we are mandated to have cameras
Yep.
on all of our boxes.
which we want to do it immediately because, you know, we take elections very seriously in this community, and we have 2 drop boxes. We're thinking about adding a third, or we're gonna replace one. Anyways, we talked about having one that's drive up, similar to like a mail drop slot, you know, but we would have to have a can. Thank you, good save. All right, anyways, so maybe 27-ish, you see, we can start seeing some of the project justifications. Capital improvement funds, Park Street, 18 Netsing Street, et cetera. So again, I'm not planning to go line by line, but I will kind of take you to each section, and if you guys have specific questions about anything, I'll do the best I can, but beyond that, I want you to study this, and this will be part of our guidebook for the next 6 years, so. Before we do that, any questions about this year budget stuff that you want to circle back to? Or we can deal with it during the budget? I'll take that as a no, awesome job, everything's great.
I do think you did an awesome job, and I read through this whole packet today.
This young lady did an awesome job. The department heads did an awesome job. I mostly just fought with them and said, no, you can't have that.
We have a lot of
I heard that
decisions
about
and
you.
comments and companies to work through, but overall, as a guide, I think it's great.
So as you can imagine, having beaten up on the department heads for the last couple of weeks about, no, you don't need all that money. Not the most popular person in the city this week. So I do have candy in my car I'm gonna hand out to maybe buy some lunch back. But you know, I run a conservative budget. You know, there's a lot of, and you'll see this more in the budget than the CIP. There's a lot of, oh, well, we totally need $50,000 miscellaneous funding for this department, right? I don't think you do. If you have something that's gonna cost you money in the future, I'd rather you come back to department heads and management, and then eventually back to the council and say, hey, look, this cost came up and we need this thing. Then you get to justify it at that point. But just giving departments $50,000 and saying, well, you know, if something comes up, go ahead and spend it. Yeah, I don't like that. You know, when you see the budget, you're gonna see that it's an ambitious budget, even while being conservative. So we certainly have no problem spending money. There's all sorts of deferred projects, deferred maintenance, and frankly, we want to get stuff done. We have the money, we're not dragons, we're not hoarding wealth here. So I want to take the money that we have that the citizens give us and do the projects that the citizens expect of us, right? That's what we're here to do, so. All right, so cemeteries, 31, if you want to take a breeze through there, see if there's anything there that interests you. I guess 32 for this one.
Later on, could you research, one time we had roads in the cemetery plan, I'm not sure if some of them were taken care of.
Yeah, so I can't remember.
I didn't
but-
make our cemetery meeting because we were up north at MML, but
Yep, so.
not tonight, but you can get back. to
Sure,
it sometime.
so I went out to the cemetery with Rodney, we looked at, they're not highways. So,
But some are bad.
so what I asked Rodney to do was to just get with the asphalt company and say, hey, what would it cost to do this section? So instead of double dipping with the engineering and the process and all that, just get it done for a substantially cheaper price. So I can't remember if that was budgeted this year or.
It is in the current year budget.
Okay, very good. I was asked about it the other day, walking around the rec track. They had a
So-
lot of time to talk to me.
So 34, next one I'm looking at, this is the equipment fund. I'm absolutely not gonna talk about all this because it's way too much. But this is a lot of big money, as you can see. Lots of toys that they wanna get, lots of trucks and stuff that's very important. So
This, I do have a lot of questions there. but
I'm sure you do.
I don't know, do you want to go over them now, or do you want to talk
I really don't.
at another time? Maybe I can.
So yeah, again, the primary purpose of this meeting is mostly to talk about what's gonna be coming to you at your budget. Because I want you to be more familiar with it, so we have a better discussion at budget time. And if you had specific recommendations for the planning commission. But if we're talking about a lot of items, wholesale changes.
And it's all in the future, so.
Yeah, so let's talk about that more in my office.
Do that.
All right. Phew, that is a lot, isn't it? 34 to 57. All right. So local streets. Local streets at page 59. 6:51, you guys are looking to talk too much. So the city actually does a pretty good job of funding its local streets. Local streets are not one of those funds that generally has a lot of money. The money that we get from the gas and weight tax is never enough to get anything done. But I believe this community transfers, what, 1 mil or something from
Half of them,
half of a mil. So despite what you might read on Facebook, I think we do a pretty good job of funding local streets. Now, whether, we have enough to do all the things we want to do, you're never going to have that, right? But I think we've got the money to tackle some of these bigger projects, and you're going to see a lot of money spent on the roads in the next couple years. All right, Major Street 74. So obviously, the big one is going to be Park Street. I think Pine's a minor street, isn't it? Local street?
yes.
Yeah,
Thanks,
okay.
Look.
So there's a little bit of using two different funds to get that big project done. But Park Street is a major road. And again, based on all the pacer and the infrastructure and everything else, this has been in the CIP for a long time. So this is not just something that came up on a whim. So big project, hoping to get that done. Hopefully everybody's happy at the end of it. Park Department, page 84. All right, so the Parks Department is not self-sustaining, and I don't know if it ever could be. It's impossible, right? You cannot charge people enough to use the parks to make all the needs, meet all the needs that are necessary. Could you imagine having a toll booth at Roden Park so we can pay for the grass mowing, right? It just wouldn't work. So this is supplemented by various other funds. And it costs a lot of money. We have great parks. We do invest a lot in them. And I'm assuming to Rodney's, Mr. Church's chagrin, we're not giving them as much money this year because I want to spend more money on the roads. Okay? But I did want you to know that we do spend quite a bit of money here. It's less than we've spent in the past. And what's that big cost next year? The Genesee Street Trail Extension and M24 pedestrian connection. Those are going to be two big costs for next year. The M24 pedestrian connection is also known as what?
Bridge to nowhere.
Path to nowhere.
Tunnel to somewhere.
Tunnel to nowhere.
Yeah, it's tunnel to somewhere.
So if you guys aren't familiar with that project, it's apparently been in the works for a very long time. So that's going to cost us some money. Genesee Street Trail Extension, is that grant funded in any way? Finance director?
I believe that is planned to be funded by the TIFA if it's not grant funded.
So one thing I believe we added to the budget for this year is replacing some of the cardio equipment over at the rec center. I don't know if you guys are treadmill folks, but I am. So I was at the rec center the other day running on the treadmill, and it said I was doing about 8 miles per hour, and I absolutely was not doing 8 miles per hour. I was loping along maybe at 4.5 miles an hour. So I talked to the Parks and Rec director, and he said that the equipment was at least 10 years old.
Didn't we replace a couple of pieces a few years back?
Well, if you did,
It could have been 10 years,
Adding some stuff.
or maybe we added some.
so again, we talked about this at length. Some places will lease the equipment and then give it back, and some places will buy the equipment and then resell it for credit later on. Apparently, we bought it, and it's just been there for 10 years because we haven't invested in the parks, the rec center that way. The rec center is getting old. There's some huge costs there. You're going to see in here boilers are getting replaced. The roof needs to be replaced in a couple of years. And this is all in the shadow of having never expanded the rec center. Right? I don't know where the plans are. We can dig them out of, I'm sure the file, but I think there were plans to expand the rec center to the tune of $4 million. And it never happened. So, it's just one of those things. It's a huge cost. So I know, Mr. Brady, you had stated that you weren't happy with the cost increase for the day passes, whatever. If you really dig deep into the budget, even with the increase, we're not covering the cost there.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of a frustration was we're already spending so much money into it. That if it's prohibitive, if it's $50 to go and less people end up using it.
Well, and so, again, I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I think Date Pass costs, or Date cost revenues for the park fund are huge. They're $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Yeah, I put together the numbers from at one point, and it seemed like, we give about $500,000 just standard every year, but then when you add on top of it, the $500,000 roof and $200,000 water slide, those kind of things.
Yep.
We love our parks. I mean, it's great. We just want people to be able to use them.
Yeah, and so again, the pricing structure in place, I always change it, but we have to crunch the numbers and make sure it works. Because again, as you know, you increase the price, fewer people will come. Fewer people may be paying more, but you ultimately make less money because fewer people come. So certainly
I
something.
was going on Sunday, but that whole parking lot was packed.
Yeah.
And I went back.
Good, we like that.
Wow, look at all those.
They do have a
good
scholarship
conscious people.
program for
Rick and I
annual
went both on
passes
a
for
Friday and a
people that
Saturday,
can.
and that was.
Yeah.
They live in the city, you have to live in the city.
It'd be nice to make sure we're like, I know I've heard about that, but it's been a long time since I've heard about it, so.
It's advertised in the schools, maybe, like in public school.
Oh, yeah. in the city.
I don't know about the other one, the redheaded stepchildren, so unsure about that. But they do advertise it in the school. It does talk about it in the flyer thingy that we all get however many times a year.
And like the kids' night out would be a good place to take them too.
All right, so I'm now on page 108, public safety. Again, along with many of the other things we do, public safety is very expensive. Eats up a huge part of both your yearly budget and also the CIP budget. Some of the things that you didn't see in the major summary is CC patrol rifles. So we have I think it's an AR-15 style rifle in all of our vehicles. And recently, the school system installed some gun safes in the SRO offices. So we decided to transfer 3 of our guns from a patrol vehicle to the schools for obvious reasons. So what we're doing and proposing to do here is put 3 new fully outfitted rifles back in patrol cars that we took them from. Police vests. So I don't know if you guys have ever tried a police belt on. They're extremely heavy, 20 to 30 pounds. And when you are getting into and out of a vehicle all day, I don't know about you guys, but when I swing my hips through a vehicle, I hit all sorts of things with my hips. I guess just my right hip, not anything with my left hip, right? So we talked to the police about potentially buying these vests instead of the belts. Apparently there are studies out there that show that this is better for the health and various things for the police officers. So we put that in the budget. And then you can see all sorts of other things. There's a surprising amount of requirements that police and fire departments have to have. And I only say that because like hose testing and ladder testing, right? We want our people to be safe. We don't want them to fall off a ladder that breaks under the weight of a firefighter. But it also costs us money every year to do that testing. So just want to point that out. Again, very proprietary. A lot of stuff is just very expensive. Sidewalks, page 128. This is very simple. I like this one because it's very simple. I believe we put in $50,000 every year for sidewalks. Okay, this is grinding sidewalks, replacing sidewalks. I hadn't been up there on that street you told me about with a really bad
Cedar
sidewalk.
Street.
Is this Cedar Street? But the mayor pointed out a really bad sidewalk last
Pictures.
year.
Rumbling.
That was just, it was simply dangerous.
It's so bad you can't even shovel in the winter, and we require our residents to shovel.
Yeah, so we worked on that. What you're gonna see slightly different this year is it's still $50,000, but it's split 30 and 20. So there is a section of Nipissing over by the dog park where the sidewalk and the street are basically at the same level. It looks bad, but it's also dangerous. And I understand that we had a young girl we killed there a couple years back. I think it was a drunk driver.
Wow, lots of children.
So I've told the Department of Public Works, I want to replace that 6-inch rolled curb, fix the sidewalk so it's safe, so we don't have something like that happen again. But also, it's kind of like the entrance to the downtown from the couple of neighborhoods that are out there. I believe that's the neighborhood where the Audubon Park is, and I see people walking through there pretty regularly. So I want to ensure that that stretch is nice, fixed, and so he estimates it's gonna be about $30,000. Which of course, the downside of that is now we only have $20,000 for all the other sidewalk stuff. But I really wanted to get that one taken care of. That was one of the first things that caught my eye when I came here. So hopefully we'll get that done here shortly. $20,000 in sidewalks does not go a long way. So we may at some point have to come back to you throughout the year and say, hey, there's this project, sidewalks we gotta take care of, and then we'll have to convince you to give us more money. But I don't wanna overfund for it either. All right, wastewater, 132. Yeah, we'll get you guys out there to see all this stuff. I still don't understand all of it. I understand it's very expensive though. So this is, I think this is one of the best put together CIPs though, because they have a very good understanding of the plant, its needs, operational, all sorts of things. So I don't question them too much on what they're gonna spend because I know they're gonna spend it well. But you can see, I pointed this out earlier, the McCormick lift station, it's about $75,000 in engineering. But next year, it's going to be up to $525,000 in actual maintenance costs. Sludge storage tank repair. Yeah, sludge, you know what that means, right? Okay.
What is sludge?
I'll get you out there to take a look.
Put you on camera, but.
And then I think this is the last one. Capital Improvement Program, page 149.
I have a question, Mike. I couldn't find Saginaw Street on the roads, on major roads or local roads. But I see in the 2829, there's a big water main to do there.
So with that, I'm just going to be in the water.
I see it in the water section, but I couldn't
Yeah.
find it.
So, go ahead.
I believe that's the same situation as Genesee Street, for instance, the water main that was replaced on Genesee Street. It's not a road project, so they do differentiate some of these projects
Yeah.
where, the road's gotta be replaced and we're also gonna fix the infrastructure.
Yep.
But Saginaw, Genesee Street that was just done, the water main needs to be done.
Yeah.
So it is a water project. And of course, the road would be done at the same time because you can't
So,
do the water main
yeah, the
without
fixing of
that.
the road is the side effect of fixing.
Because that'll be another major.
Yeah.
Major project.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, matter of fact, but Genesee's, we almost should put out a public campaign about how bad Genesee's gonna be over the next couple of years, because you got the bridge, and then you got this huge water main project that's gonna tear up the whole section, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, matter of fact, remind me to talk to staff about that, department heads next week, about, let's start planning for that public campaign of information. So, capital improvements, all sorts of fun stuff in there, which I'm not gonna get into, but, questions, or are we done? Yes, sir.
I think it's Monroe Street. Is that gonna be, we already approved it, I think, for the
Between the parks?
last budget year, or?
I believe that is in the current year budget.
Is that
On
gonna
the
go,
Monroe Street Bridge.
is that gonna go into next budget year? Or-
They just get done before July 1st or paid for before July 1st because it's a serious budget.
Because we already approved it, I know.
Correct.
Sorry, I'm trying to picture in my head my road.
We did
Is
the
that one in
bridge.
the park?
To the
Okay,
railroad tracks.
Yeah.
yeah, so I believe
Up
we
by
were going to
GLG.
do either side of it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you shoehorn projects together to make a whole section look good. But I don't know if it was to be a mill and fill. It could just be a scrub seal.
I thought it was a mill.
Is it a mill? Okay,
It's
I remember we approved it, and I think it's funded this year.
No, it's definitely funded this year, and I believe that there's a significant amount of grants. It's major streets.
The reason why it's fresh in my memory is because I take that route.
Oh,
So we find out about roads. Oh, this one's terrible.
yeah, I
It
mean,
is in the career CIP on page 82.
and that's one of those philosophical policy type questions, you know, that you could, if you wanted to, do more change things. You know, the bridge was the important thing, right? The
Mhm.
bridge had to get done. The section on either side, it's not the worst road in the whole community, but if you can do a whole big section together at the same time, you make a big section look nice. And now that whole section will age together at the same time, so that 10, 20 years down the road, you can replace it all at the same time. Could that money be reallocated to some other section of the streets that are in worse shape? Yeah. But as you guys know, the worse the shape of the road, the more expensive it is too. So you're not getting the same bang for your buck. So it's one of those questions of, there's different philosophies of how you go about doing that. And that was what was proposed by the Department of Public Works.
So that, the start date says July 2023.
Correct. It is still planned to be done this fiscal year.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the delay is, but I know that the city did get a significant portion of that project covered by an MDOT grant.
Maybe they had to do the bridge first and that didn't get done until,
Well, I know they got, I think they got
September?
done late,
yeah,
and then
I
the
think so.
paving place is closed for the winter.
The short answer is I can let you know by talking to the Department of Public
Okay.
Works. Okay, anything else? Anyone? And of course, this was just supposed to be an overview. I totally understand if you guys want to spend more time looking at it and then call me up, stop by my office. I want you to be comfortable with this, and of course, you're going to be seeing this stuff for many years. And also as part of your budget coming up. So don't feel obligated to search for questions right now if you don't have to. Ms. Hannah, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Is the funding source new, or has it always been in there? Like where it's,
I think it's a
I
little
kind of,
different
I kind of like
format.
that.
It is, because that information was in there, but it wasn't in that summary.
Okay.
And I had a hard time because that's very important information for me. So I added that to that schedule, so it would be very clear if you're looking at a project, not only what the cost is, but where is the funding coming from.
Well, thank you, I noticed that, and it does help.
It
Good,
does, 'cause
good,
it's in
thank
there
you.
very
It was
much.
very helpful to me. I added several other pages, including at the start of each category, the account number. So that'll be important when you look at your budget book. If you're looking for, where is this budgeted at? Then you can go to that account number. That's something that is very helpful for me as well, because I want to see, I like to double check things, and that helps me.
Well, I think you did a great job. Thank you, Kelly, for all the work. Thank you for you being here, and Mona being here, and Mike for taking the time to go over this with us.
So we do still have to do public comments and then I believe motion to adjourn.
Correct. Is there any public comment? Seeing no public at this time. Okay, so motion to adjourn. So move. Meeting's adjourned. That was a little quieter than it was.
I feel like this is thicker than you need a little sponge there.
No, sometimes
So
I
I
was
was
like,
like,
snapper,
it's
those
one
little firecracker snappers. that'll
previous
really get your
years,
attention.
It was printed on two sides.
Madam Mayor, I think I was
And we
talking the other day
received
about
feedback
when I was an attorney, I wanted to get a gavel.
One-sided was easier
They
to
make
read.
me a novelty size
So we
gavel,
printed
they're
it
like
on one
this
side.
big, So
Oh,
I'm gonna get you one of those.
Just-
You're gonna have to push your chair back just to
Had
use
it a
those.
long time.
Jesus.
I cannot be at school meeting. So that
I do, like, I've gone to the park
Closer.
board meetings a couple times,
Was it brought up at staff meeting?
so Farmers Creek comes together right there.
So you're very clear.
So Farmer's Creek always goes down. Is it Lake Lapeer has a dam?
Lake Lapeer. In October, they drain the lake for the residents so they can work on their docks. Usually the end of October. That's the best kayaking.
Yeah, after the water flow or the
Spring.
snow melting.
Spring can be kind of icy, but it's fun. I wouldn't send people.
So Lake Lapeer.
So have we ever had with water that's so low that you can see inside and clean it up? I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff down
Oh,
there.
the will send kids every year to clean. And then
The Flint Watershed Coalition, and then
for a while,
Frogs, I don't know if they still do that.
they haven't been. Because-
Steve
I assume you're
Steve-
talking about a company and not that.
The Chatfield kids, 4 years of them go out there and slave labor it up twice a year.
So there was a guy that
Steve
did the
Press.
juvenile
Is a parole officer.
was doing chainsaw work to make it happen. But, the guy, I forget his name, Steve, I think was his name, but not Steve Press.
Now, do we have launching places for kayakers?
So you can behind Chatfield, it's not real like easy.
That's not real.
It's like dirt.
Yeah, well.
You're right.
We have a launch in Rotary Park.
Okay.
That's in the Flint River.
That's a better place to put hands.
So I don't.
And the kayak kind of north of town. There's 3 or 4 stops north of town.
And then we got it's outside city limits, so it's on North Saginaw, we can get out. Right by Case, a bunch of us still out, but Dana Toski helped out too. Clear the land. And yeah, their parking lot, and then another guy, she's just like,
Have you ever been to Rochester Hills?
I just thought it was interesting.
The whole thing, did it like scale?
Yes.
How many places so you can get out the wall?
And these have a box back there.
That's what I want.
Back in.
So it doesn't all go in the fridge, don't worry. There's
well, our
some
new
Savatage
logo,
here that will
your
just
logo
eat
is
them all.
the A, is actually the cross that goes through the A is actually running the river.
Is it on here?
I did put together a memo.
No,
Speaking of students, I don't know why rivers south. It's not great. It's cool. I'd like to see more.
That's what I'm
Speak for yourself, I love that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Why you gotta bring that?
So that, because you're not a pedal, and if you have to put in stone,
did they ever solve that?
It really is.
It just disappeared, that
The
boy.
river is actually
Yeah, the
from
triplet.
Creek, and it doesn't join up until the river, and that river is really just one. All of North Branch is a branch of the Flint River, and they meet at the top of the reservoir. So if you go to like Columbiaville, that big reservoir is that river south. But it's just, you might have this much water.
oh, that's not good. But
Right.
that's the one that floods.
In the spring,
In-
it flows.
in
Even
different
the Flint water
places.
just flow. And in the fall, on that one weekend, they let the water out of the dam, and the water is great
Okay.
for that weekend. So it'd be cool to see what they push for that weekend. Anybody else sort of further downstream to go to the water. So really, this is pretty shallow, and you go start at town, and go north of town.
That was before.
And a lot of people pick up
Doesn't look here down,
halfway
like,
reservoir.
The issue is
how about,
how are they going to clear the creek?
Does what?
keep it up,
Because that's
Does
what
what?
that do,
can't the,
first of all. Second of all, you
your
don't want
township keep
to
those,
necessarily have
creek
everything
higher?
So for example.
It's just-
or does that mess up Lake?
Basically,
Well, they stop the lake, they stop the flow out of the lake and it floods. But there's only so much water actually going through the system. They just can raise it temporarily and lower it.
Based on what she sees.
Did you know Michigan is all actually still rebounding from the glaciers?
So.
And the creeks are cutting different hills as it rebounds from the glaciers.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that's no problem. I mean, you can go see like small little creeks and there'd be a hill here and you're like, oh, that looks just like a riverbank. Well, it was a riverbank a couple hundred years ago. And Oxbow out here is,
So at least not without public.
you can see where the river kind of went, oh,
So-
I gotta go that way. Oh, I gotta go that way again, and it makes just a loop, a donut.
We did that.
Okay.
Well, they did redirect the river.
Nobody's trained.
Dug that out, but
Mhm.
granted that
Company first,
but it's-
you can receive up to company.
But if you look at our signs, the pier signs, you'll see the A is kind of like
It's supposed to be